If I asked you if you were prepared for Monday night for your Seder, you might tell me that you cleaned your house or maybe started to clean your house, maybe cleaned a little of your car, and of course maybe bought some food and began cooking. But when I asked you if you are prepared, I don't mean any of those three things. What I really mean is, are you prepared to tell the story? And you know that we tell the story with a script, and that, of course, is a Haggadah. I had a class a couple of weeks ago, and I asked everybody to share which Haggadah they use. It's all the same words, but each Haggadah is so different. Some of you might use the Maxwell House Haggadah because it's just been used for generations. But this morning I brought a couple off of my shelf, some I use and some I look at. The first is a really interesting modern Haggadah. It's called the graphic novel. It's the entire text, but it's done within a cartoon. And it's beautiful pictures to interpret what the Passover story is about. The newest Haggadah that I just received last week, the hashtag Quieting the Silence Haggadah, from the Blue Dove Foundation, which focuses on mental health. And it tells the story of Passover through, yes, the 10 plagues, but also the 10 plagues that we are all suffering in this new world of ours, of fear, of self-judgment, of burnout, anxiety, and others. Real plagues of our day. Another newish Haggadah, the promise of liberty, a picture of an American flag on this Haggadah. It tells the story of the Exodus of Egypt, but through the American historical lens. And when you get to the page where it says, Hashata ha'cha'a l'shana haba'a be'aradi Yisrael, that next year we should be in the land of Israel, there's a beautiful insert that is the story of our founding father, former President John Adams. And he was in correspondence with the American journalist Mordechai Emanuel Noah. In 1819, John Adams expressed in a letter, he wishes that one day the Jews would inhabit the land of Israel. In 1819, he wrote these words. He said, I really wish the Jews again in Judea, an independent nation. Many years before Theodor Herzl. But my favorite Haggadah, at least at this moment, is this one. It's sort of torn to pieces, and I bought it in a flea market in Jaffa in 2007 when Rabbi Guzik and I were studying together. I guess rabbinical students, when they go on a date, they go to flea markets and buy Haggadahs. But I've kept this over and over again because if you look at the map of Israel on this book, and it's a little too far to see, you can come up afterwards and ask me to see it. It doesn't look like the map of Israel today, but it includes the entire Sinai Peninsula. And on the bottom it says, Harabanut Hatzva'it Harashit. It's the rabbinate of the Tzahal, of the IDF. The Haggadah that I'm holding in my hand was used by IDF soldiers when the Sinai Peninsula made Israel a little bit bigger physically. What is most intriguing about this Haggadah is when you turn to the back, and it has musical notes. And when you look at the song Ma Nishtana, thankfully I have a music degree, so I can not only read the Hebrew, but I can read the musical notes. And it sounds like this. Ma Nishtana halayla hazeh. And what that means is that Israeli soldiers, probably in the 1950s, saying those same words the same way that our children will sing them on Monday night. And it's sang the same way that we sang Dayenu. It would have been enough. Because for so many years we have told this story from every corner of this earth. The original Hebrew, as I said, is the same. But the mitzvah, Ki'ilu yatsa mimitzrayim, we must see ourselves as if we have left Egypt. Today is called Shabbat Hagadol. It means the Great Shabbat. It's because in the Haftarah at the end, we read of the part of the prophet Malachi, that he's going to usher in Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, that we will open our doors on Monday night and Tuesday night for one day the Messianic era of peace. But of course, it's also called Shabbat Hagadol because it references Hagadol, the great miracle of splitting of the sea and the Exodus. And yes, many rabbis every single year reference the theoretical miracles that God provides us. I think it's pretty obvious to all of us, and I mean today, that we recognize the miracle that happened last Saturday, last Shabbat. As we left our synagogues and we came home to the news that ballistic missiles and cruise missiles and drones were on their way to the land of Israel from Iran, we realized that we could not just rely on miracles. For how could you see the pictures of those projectiles going over Yerushalayim, over the Temple Mount, over the Kotel, over 300 of them, but 99.9% of them did not reach the earth. The Israeli physicist Dr. Max Abitbol, he wrote something that was floating around social media, and he said, as a physicist, this was a miracle that goes beyond the victory of the Six-Day War, of the War of Independence. What Dr. Abitbol was really saying was Dayenu. It would have been enough. He said, as a scientist, it would have been enough if 90% of those projectiles did not make it, but 99% of those projectiles did not make it. Dayenu. It would have been enough, he said, if the pilots did their job, if the system operators did their job, if the technology operators did their job, but they all acted biyachad in unity. Dayenu. It would have been enough. It would have been enough if our friend the Iron Dome helped out. But David's sling, an arrow 2, an arrow 3, they did its job too. Dayenu. It would have been enough if Israel could have defended itself. But its strong alliance with the United States of America, Dayenu, it would have been enough. But England and France and Arab countries of Jordan and Saudi Arabia helped those projectiles deflect. Dayenu. It would have been enough. On Monday, we'll recite Dayenu. For some of us, you'll take the scallions and we'll have fun with our children and hit each other. But Dayenu. Because to reach moments of Dayenu, al somchim al hanes, we do not rely on miracles. But as I asked you before, are you prepared? As Jews over our history, we have always prepared for miracles. Missile defense systems do not just appear, but years and years of rabbis from this bima saying, get involved with AIPAC, meet your congressional leaders, build relationships so those dollars of aid can go to Israel. In fact, right now, if you have not called your members of Congress after Shabbat, please do, to make sure that the $1 billion of aid gets to the land of Israel so that we do not have to rely on another miracle. Just 2 weeks ago, we had French Ambassador Eric Danon through ELNET, the European leadership, and he said the French government understands that this is not about just two countries, about Israel and Iran. But if our friends do not help, he says, then hate will be on their doorstep. We do not rely on miracles for college campuses because what we have witnessed in my own alma mater of Columbia University and down the street at University of Southern California, that if we do not advocate for action, then there are no consequences of hate. It's all of us. It's not rabbis and cantors and synagogue presidents, but it's all of us that create Dayenu. As I said before, our team leader spoke. Every single week from this bima, we have made the time in our Shabbat services to hear from voices and friends and allies. A small list of the many. If you remember, a week after October 7th, Reverend Johnny Moore from the Congress of Christian Leaders stood on this pulpit and said, "You will feel safe in my community." We have heard from Ambassador Michael Oren, from Turkish Muslim NBA player Enes Freedom, who has been to Jerusalem, and from Christian Arab from Nazareth, Yosef Haddad, who just yesterday stood on the Columbia campus, was literally beaten up, and said, "I will stand here to protect the Jewish people." We write op-eds. We stand with our students in our high schools. our colleges, and now even this week in medical schools, students who are struggling like never before. And we are proud at Sinai to educate through our Israel Center future rabbis who teach them what it means to not only be a Zionist, but use Zionism in their rabbinate so that their congregations too can say Dayenu. We instill in our youngest children at Sinai Akiba Academy and our Sinai Temple Religious School what it means to have strength as a people, what it means to have love of Israel, what it means to have a joy of Judaism, so that they can sit at your table on Monday nights and say Dayenu. Shabbat Haggadol is not only about miracles, but rabbis used to teach halachot, Jewish laws, about the order of the Seder. I'll leave that up to you to read at home. But I do want to teach one custom that I found fascinating that not many of us participate in, but I do believe has the lesson of what it means to prepare for Seder this year. There is a custom that some people, just like on Yom Kippur, will wear a white kittel, a white robe at their Seder. And it's an interesting dichotomy between Yom Kippur and Pesach, because on Yom Kippur, why do we wear the white robe? We say we want to look and act like angels. But also on Yom Kippur, the mitzvah is initem and nafshotechem, that you should afflict your souls, and therefore we are rehearsing our own death. Meaning the white robe, the kittel that we wear, is representative of the tachrichin, the shrouds that we are buried in. Rabbi Meir of Rothenburg teaches that on Pesach, when we put on this white robe, it tempers our emotions of joy. God forbid Jews should be too happy. But we can also take a different approach, because a kittel is not only worn on Yom Kippur, but a kittel is worn under the chuppah, under the wedding canopy. A kittel can also remind us of freedom and joy. On Pesach, we do not rehearse a death, but rather we participate in a marriage between the Jewish people and God. In other words, the way that we prepare for Passover when we put on that kittel is the same way that we must prepare every day of our lives. And so when I ask, are you prepared? Really, we can ask this question. When you put on your kittel this Passover, in fact, the cantor will wear a kittel on the first day of Passover when we recite the prayer for dew. We ask ourselves, will this be a shroud of death, or will it be a robe of marriage? And of course, this year, after the events of October 7th and over the last several months, we know it's a little bit of both. But you see, the answer is not found what happened last Saturday afternoon with ballistic missiles flying towards Israel. But the answer was found on Sunday. For those of you who are on social media, there's an Instagram handle or a profile, and it's called Beautiful Israel. And if any of you were the millions of people like me who saw this, what happened on Sunday morning in Tel Aviv, that was the moment of Dayenu. It was a beautiful Sunday morning in Tel Aviv, and hundreds upon hundreds of people went outside, not in fear, but out of love. And they went on the Tel Aviv boardwalk, and from the loudspeakers were not sirens, but rather it was Israeli music. And in tandem, all together, these people filled the boardwalk with dance. They celebrated the only Jewish home we have, the place that our ancestors yearned when they wrote this Haggadah, the place that these soldiers who sang Dayenu from this book once only imagined that would have happened in 2024. And so Monday nights, the food will be delicious, the words will be beautiful, but on Monday night, we will prepare to tell our story. And this year, like no other in my own lifetime, we are not only going to tell this story, but we are an active participant in living this history. And because we must be prepared. We will recognize miracles that have never happened before, and we will make sure that we are committed in the year ahead to say the words at the end of the Haggadah like we have never said those words before. Join with me. L'shana haba'ah b'Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem. Shabbat Shalom.